The functions: protect the underlying structures. If you think about your skin is protecting the muscle and the bone underneath it. It's a barrier. Did y'all know that you're waterproof? Like a duck? So next time it rains, just tell somebody beside you in line or whatever, outside or whatever, just go, oh, aren't you glad we're waterproof? And they'll look at you, and then y'all can stand there and tell them what it means to be waterproof. If we were not waterproof, and when we were exposed to water, what would happen in our bodies? We continue to swell up till we burst. I paid $10 to see that. Now, this epithelial tissue, passage of substances is one of the things. We'll get a whole lot of that and get into a whole lot of that when we get into part 2. The secreting of a substance, for example, digestive enzymes from the pancreas. Absorbing substances, like what's going to happen with the intestinal cells. So a lot of that, we'll be getting into, but thinking about it, you'll have a good idea of what that structure is going to be like. So when we talk about epithelial tissue can be simple stratified, pseudo stratified. If it is simple epithelial tissue, simple tells you one layer. That's it. Okay? Meaning just one layer of cells. Whatever their shape might be, okay, it's just one layer. Stratified, 2 or more layers are present. We're going to depend on the shape of the cell to help give its name. There's an area in our body where we're going to find something called transitional epithelial tissue. And what it does, when it's flat, it looks like one type of the cell shape, and then when it distends, it has a different look. But it is epithelial tissue. The area is your bladder. The bladder, as you drink, okay, its fluids fill up, it needs to have the ability to distend, to allow the filling. Then we get to a point where it's like, okay, bathroom time, and we go to the bathroom, and the bladder collapses until the process starts all over again. And it'll look like a different cell shape, okay? And so they term this transitional because it basically transitions between the two shapes, which is really interesting. Now, what does the term pseudo mean? Fake, false, not real, okay? So it's going to be false stratification. It's going to look like there's 2 or more layers present, but it's not. It's only a single layer, and all of the cells are attached to that basement membrane. In the epithelial tissue, the cell's shapes are termed squamous, cuboidal, columnar. Squamous looks like fried eggs. Okay? That's the best way to tell the shape of it. The other 2, they're pretty much self-explanatory. Look like a cube, or they look like a column. We can have simple squamous, stratified squamous, simple cuboidal, stratified cuboidal. We can have simple columnar, stratified columnar, pseudo-stratified columnar. Okay? So, the shapes and then the layers present tell you something about that structure, about that tissue. So if we were told simple squamous. We're being told how many layers? 1. And we're being told the shape, the fried eggs. If we're told stratified cuboidal, we're being told how many layers? 2 or more. And then the shape, cubes. If I'm told pseudo-stratified columnar, how many layers? 1. Looks like more. And they look like a column. So you see how we kind of get the naming? All right. And then, of course, our transitional, which is a really cool looking tissue.
What part of your body would have a single 1 layer? I feel like that's too thin.
When we get to talking about, all right, at this point in time, we've talked about like foodstuffs that we take in, and then that's got to make it to the bloodstream. I haven't really totally defined it for you. So at this point in time, what are your thoughts on how materials get to the bloodstream? Do you think it's something like okay, you see this, all right, which is our vascular. Right now in your minds, what do you think of as being movement of these materials? Do you think it's like through some of this really big stuff right here? Which is fine, because that's the majority of what a person's going to think about until they've taken my class. Okay? But that's not where the exchange occurs. Where does the exchange occur? At the capillary beds. So these huge arteries and veins come together and meet together in millions and millions and millions and millions of capillary beds throughout our bodies. At that point, the blood vessel at that arterial, where we're down to a very small, vessel. I mean, we can't see them. That's how small they are, okay? They're a single layer thick. And they're a single layer of what looks like the fried eggs. And the reason for that, one of the major functions of the single layer of cells is for absorption and diffusion, movement. So that was actually a really good question, because that's a really good example of the single layer. Yeah. So, a lot of times we think about movement of these materials that we're putting into the body at this really huge level of the vessels. That's not where it's occurring. The actual exchange gets to occur at that capillary level. So when we talk about the function, simple epithelial tissue, we need it because it's really good for diffusion of gases. Think about in the respiratory system. Filtration of blood, think about the kidneys, okay? Secretion, think about, for example, oil glands, all right? And absorption, the intestines. So this would be a good example of having just the one layer. Now, stratified, meaning 2 or more layers are present. It's really good for areas where we need protection. Think about our skin. It is the protective layer from this external environment to the internal environment. against abrasions. You're going to find that at the time of puberty, the skin in the vagina changes because it's got to be able to support having sex, having the abrasions that come from that. So it goes from being a simple tissue to being one that's stronger. Squamous. Squamous is really good for diffusion and acting as filtration. Cuboidal and columnar, they're really good for secretions or absorptions. In the epithelial tissue that you're going to find lining the respiratory system, it contains goblet cells, just like you would think of a wine goblet, okay? But only it's kind of turned upside down in the tissues, and it secretes mucus. Oh, yay. Okay, that gets really interesting. So far, what do you think of epithelial tissue? It's only one class. It's really interesting. It really is. Now, the structure of the epithelial tissue, one of the structures they have is a free surface, meaning it's pointing to nothing. Okay, it's like pointing to space. All right, it's smooth. One of the good things about it, helps to reduce friction. In some cases, we're going to find it has microvilli. In the digestive system, this is very important. There's a special type of microvilli in our ears called stereocilia, and it's for helping with the hearing that we have in that special sense. Okay, we have our general senses, and then we've got the special senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, equilibrium, okay, and then general senses, stuff that we kind of hot, cold, pain, pressure, that sort of thing. We're going to find that some of it has cilia, and that helps to move materials across the surface. For example, cells in the respiratory tract. We got to get stuff out. We can't have stuff moving into the lungs. In some cases, folds are going to be present. For example, in the urinary system with the bladder. So it's got some really cool structure to it. So let's see. I think before I want to start here, we're going to go for today, and I will see you tomorrow.